The air in Maplewood, Vermont carried the crisp bite of late October, with leaves swirling like embers across Eleanor Whitmore's front yard. At 78, Eleanor moved slower these days. Her hands knotted with arthritis, but her eyes still sparkled with the stubborn fire of youth. Her small, white-shingled house sat at the edge of town, its porch sagging under the weight of memories. Inside, on the dining table she'd shared with her late husband George, lay her life's masterpiece, a quilt. Its patches a mosaic of her family's past. Each square held a story: her daughter's first ballet recital, her son's high school graduation, her granddaughter's crayon scribbles. For decades, Eleanor had stitched love into every thread, believing it would bind her family forever. But forever, she learned, was a fragile promise. George had been gone a year, his heart giving out quietly one winter night. Eleanor had thought her children, Sarah and Daniel, would rally around her. Instead, they drifted. Sarah, now 52, lived in Boston, consumed by her corporate job. Daniel, 49, was in Burlington, chasing real estate deals. Their visits dwindled to phone calls, then texts, then silence. The grandchildren, grown now, sent birthday cards but little else. Eleanor told herself they were busy, that love didn't need to be loud. But 3 weeks ago, a letter arrived, shattering her illusions. It was from Daniel, written in his curt, businesslike tone. The house, he wrote, was a financial burden. He and Sarah had decided to sell it. They'd found a nice assisted living facility for her in Montpelier. The money from the sale would fund their own lives, Sarah's second home, Daniel's latest venture. Eleanor's wishes, her home, her quilt, none of it seemed to matter. She'd sat at the table, the letter trembling in her hands, feeling the sting of betrayal like a needle through her heart. She hadn't cried. Instead, she'd picked up her seam ripper and began to unravel the quilt. The dining room was dim, lit only by a single lamp that cast long shadows across the quilt. Eleanor's fingers, gnarled but steady, worked the seam ripper along a patch, a blue square from Sarah's old prom dress. She remembered sewing that dress, staying up past midnight to get the hem just right. Sarah had twirled in it, laughing, promising to make her proud. Now that promise felt as frayed as the fabric Eleanor tore apart. "Why keep it?" she muttered, her voice soft but bitter. "If they don't want me, why should I hold on to this?" Each patch she unpicked was a memory unstitched. A red plaid square from Daniel's boyhood flannel shirt when he'd clung to her after a nightmare. A yellow patch from her granddaughter Lily's baby blanket when Eleanor had rocked her to sleep. She'd worked double shifts at the diner to pay for Sarah's college, skipped vacations to fund Daniel's business school. And for what? To be discarded? Her home sold out? The front door creaked, startling her. A young woman stood in the doorway holding a paper bag. It was Mia, the 29-year-old single mother who'd moved into the duplex next door 6 months ago. Mia's dark hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her coat was too thin for the autumn chill. Her 4-year-old daughter, Ava, peeked from behind her, clutching a stuffed bunny. "Mrs. Whitmore?" Mia's voice was tentative. "I brought you some apple bread. Ava and I baked it this morning." Eleanor forced a smile, setting down the seam ripper. "That's kind of you, Mia. Come in." Mia hesitated, her eyes flicking to the quilt. "Are you taking it apart?" Eleanor's smile faded. "It's just a thing. Doesn't mean much anymore." Mia set the bread on the table, her brow furrowing. "It looks like it means a lot. All those patches, they're beautiful." "They were," Eleanor said sharply, then softened. "Sorry, dear. It's been a long day." Mia sat across from her, Ava climbing onto her lap. "Wanna tell me about it?" Eleanor didn't want to burden her. Mia had her own struggles, working nights at the gas station, raising Ava alone after her husband left. But something in Mia's eyes, warm and earnest, cracked Eleanor's resolve. She told her about the letter, the house, her children's betrayal. Her voice broke as she spoke of the quilt, how each patch was a piece of her heart, now wasted. Mia listened, her hand resting on Ava's head. When Eleanor finished, Mia said, "That's awful. But this quilt, it's still yours. It's your story, not theirs." Eleanor shook her head. "What's the point? They don't care." "Maybe," Mia said, her voice gentle but firm. "But maybe it's not about them anymore. Maybe it's about what you do with it now." Over the next week, Eleanor kept unraveling the quilt, but Mia's words lingered. She started noticing Mia more, how she'd wave from her porch, how Ava would leave drawings in Eleanor's mailbox. One afternoon, Mia knocked again, this time with an idea. "I was thinking," Mia said, holding a thermos of coffee, "what if we turned those patches into something new? Like for the women's shelter in town. They're always needing blankets, clothes, stuff to make people feel at home." Eleanor blinked, the idea catching her off guard. "Give them away?" "Not give up," Mia said. "Give forward. You made something beautiful. Let it keep warming people." Eleanor's instinct was to say no, to cling to the quilt's remains. But as she looked at Mia, at the hope in her tired eyes, she felt a spark she hadn't in months. "All right," she said. "Let's try." The dining room became a workshop. Mia brought her old sewing machine, and they spread the quilt patches across the table. Ava, giggling, sorted them by color, her small hands careful not to tear the fabric. Eleanor taught Mia how to stitch, her own hands guiding despite the ache in her joints. They worked evenings, sipping coffee, sharing stories. Mia talked about her ex, how he'd left when Ava was 2, leaving her to scrape by. Eleanor shared memories of George, how he'd dance with her in the kitchen to old jazz records. As they sewed, Eleanor found herself laughing again. The patches, once heavy with pain, took on new life. A green square from Daniel's old soccer jersey became part of a baby blanket. A floral patch from Sarah's wedding veil turned into a pillowcase. Each stitch felt like reclaiming a piece of herself, not for her children, but for her. One night, Mia looked at the growing pile of blankets and said, "You're pretty amazing, you know that? Most people would have given up." Eleanor chuckled, threading a needle. "I almost did." "Nah," Mia said. "You're tougher than that. Ava thinks you're a superhero." Eleanor glanced at Ava, asleep on the couch clutching her bunny. "She's the real hero. And you, Mia, you're doing it all on your own." Mia blushed, shrugging. "We're not alone. Not anymore." By mid-November, they'd made a dozen blankets and pillowcases. Eleanor, Mia, and Ava drove to the Maplewood Women's Shelter, a modest brick building on the edge of town. The shelter director, a kind woman named Clara, gasped as they unloaded the gifts. "These are gorgeous," she said, running her fingers over a blanket. "They'll mean the world to our residents." Eleanor watched as Clara distributed the blankets to women and children in the shelter's common room. A young girl, maybe 7, wrapped a patchwork blanket around her shoulders, smiling shyly at Eleanor. For the first time in months, Eleanor's chest felt light, as if the weight of her family's betrayal had lifted, just a little. Back home, Eleanor sat at her table, the quilt gone, but its legacy alive in the shelter's warmth. She picked up the last patch, a white square from her own wedding dress, embroidered with tiny daisies. She'd saved it, unsure why. Now she knew. She began sewing it into a small wall hanging, a reminder of her own strength. The phone rang, startling her. It was Sarah, her voice hesitant. "Mom, we made a mistake. About the house. Can we talk?" Eleanor's heart clenched. Part of her wanted to shout, to demand why they hurt her. But as she touched the daisy patch, she felt a quiet resolve. "All right, Sarah. Come over. We'll talk." When she hung up, Mia was at the door, Ava in tow, holding another batch of apple bread. Everything okay? Mia asked. Eleanor smiled, her eyes bright. It will be. Want to help me finish this? Mia grinned, pulling up a chair. Always. As winter settled over Maplewood, Eleanor's house remained hers, at least for now. Sarah and Daniel visited, their apologies halting but sincere. They promised to reconsider the sale, to listen. Eleanor forgave them, though she knew trust would take time. The quilt was gone, but its legacy lived on in the shelter, in her home, in her heart. She and Mia kept sewing, making more for the shelter, their laughter filling the house. Ava declared them the Quilt Ladies, and Eleanor couldn't help but smile at the title. The betrayal still stung, but it no longer defined her. She'd stitched a new story, one of resilience, of chosen family, of love that didn't need to be earned. On a snowy December evening, Eleanor hung the daisy patch on her wall, its threads catching the lamplight. Outside, the world was quiet, blanketed in white. Inside, her home was warm, filled with the promise of tomorrow.